It is a truth universally acknowledged that a trio of podcasters endowed with an audience of respectable size must be in pursuit of venerable... Oh, I fucked it up.
Hello and welcome to Talk Lit, Get Hit, a podcast where we read questionable books recommended to us by social media and talk shit about them.
We're Bridget, Erin and Laura, three friends who haven't mentally progressed since high school, where we bonded over a love of music and books, but mainly Twilight.
Brace yourself for a heady cocktail of somewhat highbrow and incredibly lowbrow ramblings about all the books the internet loves and our journey to figure out why.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that a trio of podcasters endowed with an audience of respectable size must be in pursuit of venerable literature to critique with vigour. Such an opening statement leaves no room for doubt regarding the subject of this month's discourse. Indeed, we are to engage with Pride and Prejudice, a work of unparalleled merit by the esteemed Miss Austen. Greetings to you, Bridget and Erin, on this fine occasion.
Greetings. Thanks, Mr. Collins, for that lovely introduction.
I take pride in blah, blah, blah. That was so embarrassing. Let's never do that again.
I loved it.
It's actually so hard to continue normally after that, but how have your months been? How have your months been, ladies?
I love when Russell comes back.
He can't keep away. He loves the podcast.
My month was really quiet. I've been sick for most of the month, so not much to report from me. But I did spend quite a bit of time over Easter watching Succession with my sister, which I know I'm late to that, but it's incredible and I really love it.
Well, you have a little taster of Mr. Darcy sort of indirectly.
Yes.
How about you, Bridget?
My month has also been pretty quiet. I went and saw Maisie Peters in Brisbane. That was great. I was very tired at work the next day though, so that was sad. But other than that, not really much. I'm on holidays at the moment, which is nice. It's raining a lot. That's me.
It was beautiful.
That is good Pride and Prejudice weather as well.
Definitely.
I haven't done anything much. Probably the highlight was I went to this patisserie in Mount Tambourine and it was so lovely out there. Just like a town centre with a bunch of shit, like so many restaurants.
Like wooden dolls.
So many stores selling like crystals and incense, but a really great patisserie as well. So
what did you eat there?
It was like for lack of better words, like custard and raspberry Danish.
Yum.
And the pastry on the bottom was like so thin and crispy and it was really good.
We love pastries on this show.
Oh, sponsor us, Pastry TM.
Did you go to the glowworm caves?
No.
Oh my God, are there glowworm caves?
Have you been?
No, we were going to go, but it was sold out. So we just walked around the top of the cave.
Oh my God. It sounds like a Talk Lit excursions on the cards. Glowworm cave.
Make it happen.
I'm down.
Link in bio if you want to crowdfund our trip to the glowworms.
I don't like caves though, because this is like a thing. Every time I go somewhere, I'm like, oh my God, there's a cave, let's go. And then I'm in the cave and I'm like, I hate caves. So I don't know why I keep suggesting like bringing up caves when I have a terrible time.
Are you claustrophobic as well?
No, I just feel like I'm just going to get stuck in the cave and die.
That's
I don't
a
think
normal
I'm
fear.
Claustrophobic. The last time I was in a cave might be the only time I've been in a cave. Can't remember. I've blocked it out.
They're actually not featured in your life at all.
Well, I went to this one called Stump Cross Caverns in Yorkshire and I had to wear a hard hat. And I was really into the hard hat because I could take selfies in the hard hat. And then we started going down these steps and I was like, oh, shit, like I've got to go in the cave now. And it was so scary, but it was also really boring because it's just rocks.
You can't see anything. It's dark.
Yeah. So
No
and you had
glowworms.
to like duck so you didn't hit your head. And then we had to watch a movie at the end and it was freezing. It was so cold in the cave. Who knew?
I always watch those spelunking
I
videos
hate
on
them.
TikTok and they traumatize me every time, but I can't look away.
It's horrific, yeah.
What even is spelunking? I
So
just
you
like
go,
the word. What is
Cave
it?
diving,
Oh.
but it's like uncharted territory.
Fuck that.
So then they get like stuck. Terrifying.
That's so crazy though. Like when we had those people stuck in like the mining cave here, and then also all those like people in Thailand that got stuck in a cave, why would you choose to go in a cave after that?
This is my question. Why are people going in caves?
Yeah, especially caves without glowworms.
Yeah. Lisa's glowworms in this one. I feel like the caves that you would be allowed to go in Australia would be much better managed than the ones in England because we have like a lot better health and safety and like regulations and things. It was the Wild West in that cave.
Someone's backyard.
Yeah, but I did get a good selfie out of it. So
Bridget the Builder.
yeah.
And that's Talk Lit on caves.
Okay, once again, no affiliation with BuzzFeed, but here we are for what feels like the millionth time.
We had this hater, I'm sure they're listening, that left us a review on Spotify that said, these two dumb broads. First of all, there's 3 dumb broads, get it right. But these 2 dumb broads, classic BuzzFeed, millennial, cringe, etc., etc. So we're just leading in to our feedback, I guess.
We're just owning it. BuzzFeed millennials.
Yeah.
But also if like Teeny Bopper magazine still existed, we would do their quizzes instead. But we're stuck with BuzzFeed.
Girlfriend.
So we are doing another BuzzFeed quiz about which Pride and Prejudice character we are. So the link will be in the episode description if you also want to find out which character you are.
And stay tuned for some really accurate descriptions of pictures because this is a great medium for podcasting. Pictures.
The first one is literally just 6 houses. I can tell you no point of difference between them.
So the first question is to pick an estate to live on. I picked the one with the lake because it's going to have ducks on it.
Good call. I'm going to pick the one that's kind of got Gothic spires and really nice flowers.
I'm picking that one too.
Hunchback of Notre Dame style.
Yeah.
I hope they like give you life advice.
I was thinking like Uncle Monty in the series of unfortunate events, his house.
So the next one is pick something that will make you an accomplished woman. These are really rough options.
I think for me, I'm going to pick knowledge of modern languages because that is the most impressive to me. If somebody can speak more than one language, I'm like,
I think I'm going to pick a good tone of voice because you will never make it as a podcaster if your voice is foul.
And you are so accomplished on that front.
Hello, hello.
I am going to go with a good air and manner of walking because I walk to work.
Slay.
Okay, so next is pick a literary insult. Oh, there are some good ones.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick, it was a delightful visit, perfect in being much too short, from Emma. I lack the ability to leave. I would love to have that ability.
It's actually an aspirational insult.
It is, yes.
I think I'm going to pick, I never saw anybody take so long to dress and with such little result. Oscar Wilde, The Importance of Being Earnest.
That's such a burn. I pick, if you will forgive me for being personal, I do not like your face, from Murder on the Orient Express.
If someone said that in my company, I would lose my mind. Like that meme. Yeah. That would be me.
I hope the listeners can visualize the meme too after that.
God. I was watching this clip of a podcast that always shows up on my TikTok feed. I think it's called The Morning. Okay, who cares what it's called? But they were doing sort of a similar thing where they were just like singing songs and talking about pictures and memes. And then one of them was like, I have to wonder if the listening experience of this show is as good as the recording experience. And I felt that in my soul.
Yeah. Next question, pick a Jane Austen book. I have only read one of these, so I'm going with Pride and Prejudice.
I've read all of them. I think I'm going to go Pride and Prejudice because it would feel offensive if I didn't, I think.
I've only read Northanger Abbey, Mansfield Park and Pride and Prejudice. And so I think I haven't read the ones that I probably would enjoy the most. So I'm going to pick Northanger Abbey because I remember reading it, understanding it, and also being like, Mr. Tilney is kind of cute.
And then finally, we have to pick where we are reading the book that we just chose. This is the easiest question, I think. I want that like really cozy cubby house vibe with the lights.
It's so cozy. Cubby houses should be a more prominent feature of day-to-day life.
Shit, yeah, absolutely.
I also love lying on the floor, so...
Yeah, floor time is the best time.
Yeah, tummy time.
Babies really know what's up with that shit.
What up, babies? Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the cubby too, because there are a bunch of sort of cozy places, like the garden with all the flowers is so nice, but why would I sit on this dry, splintery wooden chair?
All right. Last choice is we have to pick a ribbon. Ooh.
I'm going to pick the like dark forest green one because it looks velvety.
Yeah, it looks soft.
I think I'm going to pick the light mossy green.
I'm going red, I think. Oh, I thought we were getting one character. I got two.
Yeah, I got two as well. What the heck?
Maybe we just misunderstood.
It does say at the start which two characters.
Oh.
Far out.
Good thing we've got reading comprehension skills.
I mean, once again, this is so nice, you guys. I got Elizabeth Bennet and Jane Bennet.
Ooh.
I got the same.
Oh, I got Elizabeth and Caroline Bingley.
Oh,
which I feel
slammed.
like, yeah, that doesn't seem like a very nice combo.
You're a paradox.
To be fair, though, there aren't that many like nice comparisons to be had with these characters. Like ours says, "Oh, you're the best of both worlds. Not only are you smart, intelligent, funny, and strong-willed, you're also a joy to everyone you meet. Oh, you have a presence that just warms up a room with your wit and charm."
Oh, that is so true, you guys. Mine says, you are one strong human being. You've got opinions and you're not afraid to share them because, guess what? You're confident in them. Slammed.
Go boss.
Thanks, BuzzFeed.
All right, I have one little final treat before we get into the actual episode. I got ChatGPT to rewrite some sections from books that we've covered on the show in the style of Jane Austen. So I'm going to read them out and you can guess where they're from. The first one says, he, with eager ardour, managed to encompass her entire bosom within the confines of his mouth.
Oh, I wonder which one this is.
Every inch was held tenderly as if to savour the sweetness therein. A low, fervent sound escaped his lips, indicative of his profound desire, as if he harboured the inclination to consume her entirely, body and soul.
I can't even express how uncomfortable I feel. I did not enjoy that at all. It's almost worse in Jane Austen's style.
It goes longer, so
I kind of liked it.
Obviously that's the love hypothesis. Do you think it would still be called the love hypothesis, or would it be called like
Doth love hypothesis?
science in olive trees or something? I don't know. What's another name for it?
Should we ask?
Yeah.
Affections and assumptions.
I really like that.
Lovely. Yeah. It fits it more because, like, as we said in the episode, they weren't hypotheses that she was writing and they were operating under a lot of assumptions that were wrong. Like this book should be published.
This one is traumatizing.
Like the last one, was it?
This one's so much worse. So just have your sick bucket handy.
Strap in. Mummy fruit up.
Every fibre of my being quivers with an intensity beyond measure as waves of ecstasy traverse through my form, causing my eyes to flutter closed and my spine to curve away from him. With unwavering determination, he continues his gentle ministrations until the convulsions subside, leaving me utterly spent, ensconced in a state of bliss upon his bosom.
Is it Icebreaker?
It is.
Oh, what scene is that?
It was one of the less offensive parts of the finger banging scene.
Yeah.
I actually didn't want to type out any of the other bits. I was going.
Is it the car scene?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of which book was like so like explicitly just gross, and that was the only one that came to mind.
Okay, lucky last. This is a little bit of dialogue. What age do you count, sir? Inquired she. 17 summers have graced my existence, he promptly replied. And for what duration have those 17 years adorned your countenance? She inquired further, her gaze fixed upon him. A shadow of contemplation danced around his lips as his eyes wandered to the distant road. A considerable span of time, he confessed, at length.
Shit, I'd read that.
Bridget's hooked.
Oh, it's so good in any form.
I mean, we don't have to say, surely.
Maybe we shouldn't publish that because Stephanie Meyer might come for you because you've done a better job than she did. Because that's, as we know, that's what she was trying to do. She's just trying to rewrite Pride and Prejudice. So, Oh, amazing. Incredible. Never been done before.
Shout out to the future of technology. As always, hats off to us. We read the book. We assembled our thoughts. We had a lot of feedback in our survey from people wanting us to read the classics. And so double pat on the back because tick and tick, we have done it. So with that in mind, I guess what were your initial thoughts, expectations, hopes and dreams heading into Pride and Prejudice? Bridget.
I can't remember when I first read Pride and Prejudice, but I feel like it's always just been known to me. I watched the BBC series when I was very young and I can't remember when I watched the movie, but you know, it's also one of Bella Swan's favourite books and we all know that she is my guiding light in this world. I don't know, maybe I read it because of Twilight. I don't know. It's a bold claim. I don't think I would have been reading it before I read Twilight. How about you, Erin?
I was frightened. I'm sure I've said on the pod before, I am not a classics girly, so I was afraid to read this. I felt like I already kind of like knew what it would be about, so I thought it would be easy, but I was still scared. Laura.
I think I read it in high school and I sort of have a memory of it being the first classic that I kind of read and comprehended. Like I remember seeing the characters as real people and sort of seeing it in a bit of a modern context. So I think maybe I've only read it once or twice, but I definitely watched the 2005 movie about 100 times. So I was really excited to read it again. But again, a little bit nervous that I only understood it as a teenager because I was just kind of glossing over it and like pretending that I understood it.
Well, I've never seen the movies. I've never watched the show. The closest I've been is like Twilight, and there used to be this YouTube series called the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which was like not a parody, but like a simplification of this.
This is like crazy though, because in the Song of Achilles episode, you were like, how do you not know more about like Achilles? And to me, it's like, how do you not know the whole plot of Pride and Prejudice? Like it's just burned into my brain. It's just what you grow up with though, because mum was, you know, big Colin Firth fan and loves the miniseries.
Can relate.
Yeah, understandable.
I mean, I get it. Not so much a let's get Noodlebox and watch Troy kind of girls' night in.
It's interesting though, because I thought I knew what Pride and Prejudice was about going into it. And spoiler alert, I did not know most of what happened in this book.
Yay.
That's good. Let's get into it. Pray, permit me to caution you. The episode at hand carries with it certain revelations which, if prematurely disclosed, might very well rob you of the pleasure of experience. As such, I entreat those who hold dear the joy of discovery to proceed no further. Let it not be said that we did not offer fair warning, for it is with the utmost respect for the narrative's integrity that we advise discretion. Likewise, we implore you to understand that the ensuing discourse may touch upon subjects of delicate nature, including sexism, classism, adult and minor relationships, and the occasional swear word. We thus entreat your discretion in accompanying us through these conversations.
When Elizabeth Bennet first meets eligible bachelor Fitzwilliam Darcy, she thinks him arrogant and conceited. He is indifferent to her good looks and lively mind. When she later discovers that Darcy has involved himself in the troubled relationship between his friend Bingley and her beloved sister Jane, she is determined to dislike him more than ever.
In the sparkling comedy of manners that follows, Jane Austen shows the folly of judging by first impressions and superbly evokes the friendships, gossip and snobberies of provincial middle-class life.
Okay, what are our big adult post-read feelings of Pride and Prejudice? Erin, would you care to take the lead?
So as I alluded to before, I was really surprised after reading this how much of Pride and Prejudice I did not know. I am really so confused about how Twilight is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. I don't see the connection at all. But I guess in summary, I thought it was fine. I thought it was funny. I wish they would all get to the point a bit faster, but that's like the vibe. But yeah, it was fine.
I want to know what you thought happened.
I thought that they were like in closer proximity and were enemies for longer. And so when they were apart for so long or whatever, and it was so much about the other sisters and shit, I was like, hang on, like they're not actually hanging out that much. I thought the like confession scene was a bigger deal than it seemed in the book. And maybe that's just because of all the like fan culture around like the movies and stuff and the hand flex and all that kind of stuff. But I thought it was like a big confession, where in the book it didn't feel so big to me when it happened. I think it was just that it wasn't just about Darcy and Lizzie. I was surprised that it had so many other plots going on.
I have seen some people say that the book is very female focused and the adaptations try to bring a bit more of the male perspective in and try to tell more of that story, where the book is really just about the girls.
As it should be.
I like that.
What about you, Bridget? What were your feelings after reading it for the 50 millionth time?
I love it. Next. Laura.
Yeah, I also really love it. And it was so much more hilarious than I remember it being. Kind of what you were saying, Erin, about how like you thought that the scenes were more dramatic than how they appeared on the page. I was thinking it was that kind of thing like where when I'm reading Shakespeare on the page, I'm like, I don't know what the hell this means. Like I can't interpret how this would be said, what the meaning of it is. But then when I see someone perform it, I'm like, oh, this is juicy. Like this is so romantic. Or he's saying this line, which I didn't totally understand, but like he's such a nervous square, and I can kind of get a better feel for the emotion of it. So I think definitely being so obsessed with the movie helped my reading of the book, because I think it gave it a little bit more kind of context that I probably wouldn't have picked up on if left to my own devices, because I'm just not that creative.
I came to the same conclusion as you, Laura. I listened to the audiobook in, I think, like December last year, the one that's read by Rosamund Pike, and that was so good. And then I read it this past week, and then I watched the BBC series, and then I watched the movie, and then I started listening to the audiobook again. Each different interpretation gives more context to it, I think. Having the book in collaboration with the performances really helps.
I know, I was trying to find an answer how many adaptations, interpretations, like spin-offs of it there were. I couldn't find a straight answer, but there must be thousands, hey? It's just such a classic tale. I mean, we know from BookTok the girlies love an enemies to lovers, strangers to lovers, dare we say, romance. And I was kind of thinking that as I was reading as well, that I think because this is some of the early, I don't know, media or TV I consumed, it was one of the first movies I remember kind of watching as a teen and becoming fully obsessed with. Like I loved Pride and Prejudice. I loved Becoming Jane, which is a movie with James McAvoy and Anne Hathaway about Jane Austen. I loved this movie called Bright Star about John Keats, and just that same sort of like period drama, yearning, like propriety, like, you know, societal expectations, the like restrained way that they're interacting with one another. And I was like kicking my feet as I was reading Pride and Prejudice, and just thinking about how reading this or enjoying this at a young age definitely informed what I look for in a book now.
I agree. And I think that's why I'm so disgusted by books like Icebreaker, where they have these like explicit scenes that go from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds. It's like, where's the staring? Where's the like the finger touch? I don't care about this. I just want you to stare at each other for 3 months.
Compliment her eyes.
Yeah, just do like argue with her about like her family's place in society or something. Don't hook up in the back of an Uber. Gross. I think that's like conditioned me to be a prude reading this book.
Yeah, same. I'm such a square.
It is pretty crazy though, because it has shaped so much of what like modern romance looks like. And it really is so like progressive a novel for how old it is.
Just kind of thinking about all the different relationships that Jane Austen puts on display, like Kitty and Wickham, or even Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. And then we have like Sunshiny Bingley and Jane. And it is so modern in the way that when Darcy falls for Elizabeth, he's falling for her for the right reasons. Like she's intelligent and she stands up against him, and she's not afraid to, you know, tell him how she feels and be honest with him. And then they're both willing to kind of change the way that they are and like learn from one another and grow together, which I think is such a modern way of looking at a relationship. And that's something that I just really appreciated more reading it as an adult.
When Darcy says he's doesn't have the talent for conversing easily with people he doesn't know. And she says, well, maybe you should practice. The next day he turns up at her house to practice talking. And it's just so cute. And when he, like in the movie, this is sort of shown, but she's very fond of walking. And then you never see him riding a horse again. He walks everywhere from then on out because he just wants to know her. And I love it so much.
Wow, there are tears in my eyes.
Yeah, same.
Oh my God.
I love him.
I love him too. Obviously, I know we're talking about the book, but I think the Matthew McFadden, Mr. Darcy, he really looks like such a shy square. Like he's always just like, a Lego milady. Like, but he's hot, so he can pull both off.
And same with Colin Firth. Like he is so like scraggly and just looks so sad and angry all the time. But when you catch him like staring at Elizabeth like through the window after he's had his bath or whatever, or when he unexpectedly runs into her, you can just see like that shyness in his face. So good. Incredible.
I'm reading this historical romance uk.blogspot.com. We'll put it in the show notes. But they've highlighted this really nice passage kind of in line with what we were just talking about as well, where at the end of the novel, Mr. Darcy says, "Such I was from 8 to 28, and such I might still have been but for you, dearest, loveliest Elizabeth. What do I not owe you? You taught me a lesson, hard indeed at first, but most advantageous. By you I was properly humbled. I came to you without a doubt of my reception. You shewed me how insufficient were all my pretensions to please a woman worthy of being pleased." I love that he's humbled, as it should be.
These great men always need to be humbled.
Well, it is pretty impressive, even when Mr. Bennet is like, no, I'm not going to value as much anymore, Lizzie, if you choose a husband or like you accept a husband that you don't love or whatever. That's pretty progressive, but I did think it was interesting. It makes me curious, I guess, how Mr. Bennet was progressive, but Mrs. Bennet was like a traditional wife wanting to like improve their standing or whatever. And I think this ties back to some of what we spoke about in the My Brilliant Friend episode as well, about how sometimes mothers have to do like harsh things to their daughters to try and improve their standing, which isn't always so like popular with the daughters. And so the dad always seems like the good parent or the fun parent or whatever. But whatever the mother is doing is almost always like founded in love and in good intentions anyway.
She was like nearly certifiably insane though.
Is she?
Yeah. I don't know. I think she's off her chops.
Is that in the book?
She's a
silly woman.
She's so silly. She's so rude.
Classless.
And
wench.
the father is like just checked out. He doesn't give a shit about anybody. He just wants to stay in his library.
That's so interesting. That's not how I like interpreted that at all.
Like the lack of propriety shown by your family, like that's one of the reasons why Mr. Darcy proposes to her against his better judgment. Her mother like isn't behaving the way she should in society. Mr. Bennet doesn't care about how to behave in society, so he just doesn't. The sisters are out of control. The only two people like with a resemblance of any manners are Jane and Elizabeth, but they're like shadowed by the rest of their family. I think she's crazy.
Yeah, okay. I just assumed that they like didn't care for like social norms and stuff, which I loved. I didn't pick up that she was crazy. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think she does care for social norms, but like only if she's coming out on top, sort of like, yeah.
Yeah, she's like a social crawler.
I think her motives like are purely shallow and for social progression. And I think like perhaps her heart is in the right place to want that for her daughters. But the way she goes about that is completely tactless. I don't know. There's even this quote at the beginning of the novel that I think kind of reflects on their relationship. And it says, "Mr. Bennet was so odd a mixture of quick parts, sarcastic humour, reserve and caprice that the experience of 23 years had been insufficient to make his wife understand his character. Her mind was less difficult to develop. She was a woman of mean understanding, little information and uncertain temper. When she was discontented, she fancied herself nervous." Kind of reading it did make me think, did Jane Austen hate her mother? I was like, I hate Mrs. Bennet, but oh no, I'm a misogynist again. But then I really liked Elizabeth and I really liked Jane and I really like heaps of the other female characters in this book. I think she's ridiculous, but I love Caroline. I think Charlotte's an interesting character. Even Catherine Berg.
Yeah. Mrs. Bennet is one of the worst people in the book.
I love one of the first sections that just made me cackle uncontrollably is when Mrs. Bennet's been hounding Mr. Bennet to go and call on Mr. Bingley. And he's like, no, why would I do that? I'm not going to do that. And then she's banging on about it. And then there's this section I've highlighted. She's getting in a tizzy about how he won't visit Mr. Bingley. And it says, Mrs. Bennet deigned to not make any reply, but unable to contain herself began scolding one of her daughters. Don't keep coughing so, Kitty, for heaven's sake. Have a little compassion on my nerves. You tear them to pieces. Kitty has no discretion in her coughs, said her father. She times them ill. I do not cough for my own amusement, replied Kitty fretfully. And then Mr. Bennet's all like, nah, just joking. I actually did go to see him. And then he's like, Kitty, you may now cough at leisure. And then Mrs. Bennet's all like, oh, that was such a funny joke. What a hilarious jape. Oh, you're a funny man.
Those scenes were so funny. And that's why I felt like I really enjoyed like the interactions between the parents because I saw them in a really like humorous and light way and not so like, she's a crazy bitch.
I can't remember the sentence, but I think there was something that kind of alluded to the fact that Mr. Bennet was like not thinking with his upstairs brain when they got married. Something that I found really interesting in the book was the way that Jane Austen describes or doesn't describe characters. And sort of as I went through, I was realizing that she never really seems to say like Jane has blonde hair, Elizabeth has white skin and is really skinny, Mr. Darcy's got like, you know, sideburns and great teeth. It was more like an impression of a character. Like she would talk about their demeanor or like their presence, you know, he had a pleasing countenance or they were plain or she had dark eyes or whatever it might be. I think one of the first descriptions of Mr. Darcy says, Mr. Darcy soon drew the attention of the room by his fine, tall person, handsome features, noble mien, and the report which was in general circulation within 5 minutes after his entrance was of his having 10,000 a year. I don't really know if that was the usual style of writing for this time or if it's something that's kind of particular to Jane Austen, but I found that I really loved it because how many times have we read something and then been like, oh, he's blonde again?
Like her writing is more of an observation than telling a story or analysis of their like motivations or anything like that, like a character profile instead of a description.
I usually gloss over descriptions anyway, but these were like tangible descriptions, I thought, to shape how we were supposed to interpret all the characters. So I liked it too.
There's another passage I highlighted about Bingley and Darcy, and I love Bingley. I think I've seen the internet calling him a himbo, and I mean, it could be because of that kind of like folklore that exists outside of the novel once the internet starts making fan edits of like the movies and that kind of thing. But he really does just seem like such an upbeat, lovable, sweet kind of man. And I think this passage supports that. It says, Bingley was endeared to Darcy by the easiness, openness and ductility of his temper, though no disposition could offer a greater contrast to his own, and though with his own he never appeared dissatisfied. I just think, yeah, easy and open. That's Mr. Bingley to a T. What a sweet, sweet man.
He is really nice. I thought he was just chilling. But I also felt so sad for him when he was like led astray by everyone thinking that Jane didn't like him. Like,
I know.
You silly boy.
And I thought that section as well where I think at the start of the novel, Elizabeth is talking to Charlotte Lucas. Charlotte says something like, Jane needs to like come on a bit stronger because like we know her and we know she's keen, but I don't think anyone else is picking up what she's laying down. Again, like that's just such a modern conversation. Like you would definitely have that conversation with your friends. And I don't know, I really enjoyed just seeing like girlhood or whatever. Like, I mean, you can see why it's so adaptable, like why people just keep putting this in different contexts and different interpretations because it's just like the through line is so human and relatable.
So crazy to think that so much has changed in the world in the 200 years since this was first published. but so much of this is still so like true and natural for humans now. Like we've changed, but not that much.
I love Mr. Bingley and I love Jane, and like if I could tear my eyes away from Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy for a second, like that's who I would gravitate towards. They're so lovely together, and I think this quote from Mr. Bennet really like sums up both of their personalities so well. It's after he has proposed and Jane has accepted, and he says, "You are a good girl," he replied, "and I have great pleasure in thinking you will be so happily settled. I have not a doubt of your doing very well together. Your tempers are by no means unlike. You are each of you so complying that nothing will ever be resolved on, so easy that every servant will cheat you, and so generous that you will always exceed your income." And I can just imagine their cute little life together. Oh, they're so sweet. And I get big himbo vibes from him, but I love him. Like when Caroline and Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth are having like a sort of back and forth when Caroline and Elizabeth are walking around the room together and they're just like shooting barbs at one another. And he's like watching a tennis match. He's like, wow, I love this. My friends are all like having fun together. And he doesn't really get what's going on. But he's like, oh, everyone's getting on. I love it. Elizabeth loves reading. Mr. Darcy loves writing. Caroline loves walking around the room. I love everybody. He's just having a great time.
I really enjoyed Jane as well. I love that she wasn't just like the pretty sister. I don't know if it was a sense of humour thing or something that was common in the time, but I loved the way that she signed off her letters, you know, from Jane, love, etc. Mr. Bingley was just so upbeat and agreeable. Like he tries to be such a mediator as well, but he doesn't really have the skill to smooth things over in quite the way he hopes. Like I love that scene where all of the Bennets rock up and Mrs. Bennet's really embarrassing herself by talking about like, we dine with 24 families and, you know, there's heaps of personalities here. It's not so different to London, and starts to get a little bit out of pocket. I think it's in a conversation after kind of talking shit about the family and saying like, they have family in Cheapside. How can you associate with them? And Mr. Bingley said, if they had uncles enough to fill all of Cheapside, it would not make them one jot less agreeable. And then again, when Elizabeth and Darcy are having that back and forth about accomplished ladies, and then he says, it's amazing to me how young ladies can have so much patience to be, you know, learning and as accomplished as they are, whatever he says. He's just so sweet.
And it's also funny that bit because he says like, if I put my mind to something, I'll have it done in 5 minutes. And, you know, if I decide to go, I will be gone. And then Mr. Darcy's like, yeah, but at the same time, if someone was like, hey, maybe we should stay, you'd be like, oh, yeah, of course, we'll stay. You know, happy to go with the flow.
He truly is just a guy bopping about.
Yeah.
There is not a more apt descriptor for Bingley.
And then on the other hand, Caroline Bingley, what a snake of the grass, but also so hilarious and so modern in the way that she is. Like I loved the scene, I think after Elizabeth had been like, I don't even know how you even know one accomplished lady if you're going to be so harsh on them. And then the second she walks out of the room, Miss Bingley says, Elizabeth Bennet, said Miss Bingley when the door was closed on her, is one of those young ladies who seek to recommend themselves to the other sex by undervaluing their own, and with many men, I dare say, it succeeds. But in my opinion, it is a paltry device, a very mean art. And I love that because I feel like we're seeing that so much on TikTok at the moment. Like, she's not a girl's girl.
Yeah. That's what like came through my mind this whole time. I'm like, Lizzie is like the first pick-me girl. And then, but like not in a bad way, like set the mold for being like, I'm not like other girls. Like actually not just saying that so you like me more. Like she doesn't care about that bit. She's like the first, not like other girls.
Yeah, but I think like Caroline didn't get what she was saying about the not knowing any accomplished girls because she was making fun of Mrs. Darcy. But Caroline completely missed the point and was like trying to say, well, I'm a friend to all women, even though she's like the biggest bitch going. And I actually really like her for that. She was committed to her cause.
She's a hater, a born hater.
I think she was, one of the great bitches of history because even in the letter she wrote to Jane, I think when she first sort of requested come hang out, My mum says, come hang out. It was like, if you are not so compassionate as to dine today with Louisa and me, we shall be in the danger of hating each other for the rest of our lives. Like,
So fun.
yeah. Hang out or I'll hate you, bitch.
Bored.
Again, the cringe in that room where she's just hounding Darcy, trying to get his attention. There are a couple of great things that I enjoyed. But where she's just banging on, how delighted Miss Darcy will be to get this letter. He made no answer. You write uncommonly fast. You are mistaken. I write rather slowly. How many letters you must have occasion to write? Letters of business. How odious I should think them. It is fortunate then that they fall to my lot and not to yours. She's just not picking up what he's laying down.
I really loved that scene.
I know.
I thought that was so funny. And it's just so relatable to be like grasping at straws to find anything to talk about with a guy that you think is hot. Like, please notice me.
Or another iconic Miss Bingley moment as well. They're all hanging out, once again reading. Miss Bingley's attention was quite as much engaged in watching Mr. Darcy's progress through his book as in reading her own. And she was perpetually either making some inquiry or looking at his page. She could not win him, however, to any conversation, blah, blah, blah. At length, quite exhausted by the attempt to be amused with her own book, which she had only chosen because it was the second volume of his, she gave a great yawn and said, how pleasant it is to spend an evening in this way. I declare, after all, there is no enjoyment like reading. Shut up, girl. Calm down.
She'd be the kind of girl to like steal someone's hoodie and like not give it back.
And then just like the little things that made me go, wee. Miss Bingley stands up to walk around the room. It says something, she looks good. She's doing this for Mr. Darcy, but he's still writing his letter. And then she tells Elizabeth to stand up and walk around, and it says, Mr. Darcy looked up.
Like immediately.
And unconsciously closed his book or something like that. Like gripping my, clutching my pearls. Should we talk about Mr. Collins?
He's a funny little man, isn't he?
He is a funny little man. And I love that our first intro to him is where Mr. Bennet is essentially like, read this letter. Doesn't he sound dumb? I hope so. Let's invite him to tea.
And then he writes the letter that he's making fun of at the end as well, right? When Mr. Collins is the one who's like, I've heard Lizzie. And then Mr. Bennet's like, oi, Lizzie, check this out. What a dum-dum. So funny. But then also the letter he writes back to him at the end that's like, you right, bye.
I loved Mr. Collins. I was almost always laughing when he was saying something. He was just so funny to me. I think it's done so well in the movie, but where he's saying about how he loves to kind of like build up the self-esteem of Lady Catherine's daughter. And he says, these are the kind of little things which please her ladyship, and it is a sort of attention which I conceive myself particularly bound to pay. Mr. Bennet's expectations were fully answered. His cousin was absurd as he had hoped, and he listened to him with the keenest enjoyment, maintaining at the same time the most resolute composure of countenance. And except in an occasional glance at Elizabeth, requiring no partner in his pleasure.
I feel like we've all been there. We've all been at some function with someone who was just absolutely ridiculous, and you're like, this is why I came. This is a free show for me right now.
And there's like truly no greater joy than like catching the eye of your friend across the room and knowing you're both laughing at the same thing.
Oh, dear.
That like solidarity.
Tears shimmering in your eyes from like held back laughter.
And like you don't even have to say anything, but you just know that the debrief after is going to be incredible.
I feel like as well the character of Mr. Collins could appear in any high school teenage boy trying desperately to get the girl he likes to go out with him. It'd start with like a text or something like, I've got a secret. I like someone, you know her very well. Like that sort of vibe. Yeah.
Yes.
Or like when you're hanging out with a friend that's a boy and like all of a sudden they're like looking at you like, and like you know what's coming.
Yeah.
That's Mr. Collins to a T, I think.
And that's so incredible. Like Collins and Caroline are like the same character. They should just fall in love and love each other.
Can you imagine?
At least they would both have someone who would like love them completely.
Speaking of Mr. Collins falling in love, he goes on quite a journey. So obviously he first sets his sights on Jane, not for any particular reason, just because she's the eldest, and then is like, you know, subtly persuaded by Mrs. Bennet to go to Elizabeth instead. She obviously rejects him, which it's like a reverse card. He like rejects her rejection and he's like, oh, no, I know what you're doing. Don't worry. But I did see some people on TikTok and I have thought the same thing to myself in the past. I don't know why he just didn't marry Mary. And I saw this really interesting TikTok from the creator, Please Leave a Message. We'll put it in the show notes. She was sort of disputing this because like he and Mary have a lot of the same interests. They're both boring, for one. No one likes them, for two. But she was saying that Mr. Collins is all about propriety and decorum and he does things in the right way. So he's not really looking for any particular woman. He was trying to keep the estate in the family, and so he went from eldest to youngest. And maybe the logical thing would have been for him to propose to Mary after, but he gets laughed at by the sisters. Mr. Bennet says in front of him that if Elizabeth marries him, he would never speak to her again. So he knows his limits, and this is the first time he's really known them. Like he's been aware of what's happening around him. Also, if you think about the age of the girls, like Mary's 18 or 19, Charlotte Lucas is about 25 in the book. And for someone who's going to take on a role as, you know, in the community that she would have to do, an 18, 19-year-old is a weird choice. I also see in Laura's notes that I think she would like to be one of Mr. Collins's love interests.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to expand on that?
Sign me up. I saw a TikTok from the creator Ray_Amber_Ray, which will also be in the show notes. It was her having a hear me out moment for Mr. Collins. And the arguments for Mr. Collins were pretty persuasive. He's the perfect man. He's got a steady job. He likes long walks. He's got great connections. He loves to host company. He loves to try new things. He's respectful. He dances. He's very loyal. He cares about family. He's got an extensive vocabulary. He knows how to talk about his feelings. He travels well. He's considerate. He's a homeowner. He's proud and confident. He gardens. And, I mean, we don't so much get it on paper, but we did see some great clips from the BBC miniseries in this TikTok, and he does have a charming smile.
He's also a great dancer in the BBC miniseries. He does a little jig and he's so good at it.
Cute. I think that's a genuinely great point. Like, it's a very funny video, but I don't think Charlotte Lucas was doing anything silly at all. And I love when we go to their house and Elizabeth kind of gets to see like, oh, okay, Charlotte knows what she's about. She set it up so like Mr. Collins doesn't disturb her in this room, and she knows how to manage him. She's kind of like handling him, and she has everything she needs.
Yeah.
And I like that Elizabeth was able to appreciate that for her friend and kind of like humble herself to the fact that he may be a silly man, but this girl's kind of come out on top.
Yeah, and I think the Bennets were kind of mean to him. Like you just said, he was not a bad guy, and they were really mean to him. And Charlotte was right to like see a good man and be like, well, they're not doing it, so I'll do it. Like, they were mean girls.
They have terrible manners, all of them, except for Jane.
No propriety. One revelation I had in reading this book was about the length of the dances.
Me too. I was blown away by this.
Same. No wonder they're all so physically fit, because there was a passing sentence about the dances being half an hour long.
Yeah, one dance.
Blown away. I thought they were like a couple minutes. Radio edit. Do you have a radio edit of this Mozart?
And they were like fully choreographed dances and stuff, right? So like a lot of effort went into that.
I wouldn't be going to those balls, God.
No wonder Darcy didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I loved that scene, though, when Mr. Darcy does ask Elizabeth to dance. She's kind of giggling with Charlotte, I think, and then the proposal takes her by surprise, and then it sort of says something like, oh, my God, she doesn't even know why she said yes. She's so random. And then when they are dancing and he's just completely silent.
I loved that bit so much. And she's like, well, I've tried talking. Now you have to come up with something.
Comment on the size of the room or how pretty all the women look. Another modern, completely relatable sentiment as well when Mr. Darcy does ask Elizabeth to dance and Charlotte sort of says, I don't know, like it might be all right. You might kind of like him. And then Elizabeth says, heaven forbid, that would be the greatest misfortune of all. To find a man agreeable whom one is determined to hate. Do not wish me such an evil. It's so good. Oh, she's got such good barbs.
The barbs that are exchanged in the proposal scenes are like next level. And when I was reading it, I was just imagining how good she would feel after. Like she was like, yep, I ate him for breakfast, gone home, he's crying about this. I slammed him. But then even later on in the book, like the second proposal as well, they just have such good chemistry and they just work together so well, whether they're fighting or apologizing or confessing their mutual love for each other. It's just always a delight to read.
I agree. I'd forgotten basically everything about Mr. Wickham. I'd forgotten that he was even a suitor for Elizabeth. I'd forgotten about his beef with Darcy and why, and then I'd forgotten about the drama with him and Lydia running away. I just love the way that unfolded as well. And he is such a nasty man when he's telling Elizabeth about it the first time and he's kind of talking about Georgiana and he's saying like, oh, yeah, we were always really close and I invested a lot of time into becoming her friend and I don't even know what I did, but she's just a bitch now. And I heard she has no class and like she's kind of a brat now that she's grown up. Liar.
I love how often he wants to like bring it up as well. Like Elizabeth is the same. Like any chance they got to talk shit, they took it. Like the second they met, he was like, what do you know of Mr. Darcy? And she's like, what do you know of Mr. Darcy? Let's talk. And that just continued on. So I did enjoy their relationship, even though he's a slimy little rat.
Yeah, he was another character that was like so familiar. Like I've met boys like you. When the Lydia thing came up, that was one of the points where I was really like, what the fuck is happening here? This is not at all what I thought was happening in this story. I was so confused where it was going. I was like, but what about Lizzie?
And then Mr. Darcy pays for it. Oh, he's such a nice man.
For so long, I wasn't really getting the Darcy appeal. And then I think when it started, the slow reveals of like, he fixed that and he did it on the quiet and then he makes all these minor adjustments to his behavior and you can like start putting all the pieces together. And I think for me, because it was my first time reading it, as Lizzie's putting it together, I had been like, oh shit, I missed all that. Like I didn't realize he was changing. He comes back to her and he's like, look, if you still hate me, just let me know because my feelings haven't changed. And I was like, bro.
No. He's so nice.
I could literally just spend this whole episode just being like, oh, I love him.
Oh. I actually have nothing to say that's not like, I just loved it. I mean, I've blathered on for a fair while, but whatever. We don't need to talk about it. I did see something upsetting before. It was an article published on Marie Claire. I don't know if this is the first source, but it was what Mr. Darcy really looked like. And I'm sorry, ladies, it's not good. Maybe we'll put this photo on our Instagram because it's really something. Some artists have created an historically accurate portrait of Elizabeth Bennet's lover. Allegedly, Mr. Darcy would have had sloping shoulders, powdered white hair, a long nose, a pointy chin, and a pale complexion. It also points out that despite his more slender frame and 5'11" height, he would have had large quads, thighs, and calves.
Like a centaur.
Horse keeps going.
Now it's really not a surprise why she didn't describe anyone.
It sort of looks like a character in the Pirates of the Caribbean, I think. Like the guy that's meant to marry Elizabeth Swann, maybe, but like less hot. Those little beady eyes.
You know what else he reminds me of? Have you seen Barbie in The Princess and the Pauper?
Is that the one that you're just like me?
Yeah. And there's like the old bad guy in that. He looks like that.
And is he the one that has a little like raccoon pet?
I think so, but he's got this like evil song.
Yeah, what a creepy little man.
Oh my God, I just looked it up.
It's right?
Preminger?
Yes. If you weren't picturing Preminger from Princess and the Pauper, you're viewing Darcy wrong.
New sleep paralysis demon unlocked. I wonder if Jane Austen was kind of like, I have a sense that in the future men are going to get way hotter, so I'm just not going to explain what he's wearing or the fact that he has a wig. I'm just going to leave it vague. Maybe. She was like, onto her PR manager, how can we strategize to make this truly timeless? Are we thinking Elizabeth is like a red lip and gold hoop kind of girly?
Clean girl aesthetic, mob wife. What are we feeling?
Oh my gosh. I mean, obviously undoubtedly cottagecore. But I mean, it seems the obvious choice.
So coquette.
When I was in England last year, I actually went to a few of the filming locations from the movie, Pemberley, which is at Chatsworth House in Derbyshire. And I've got a postcard to show you guys from there that I never sent.
Oh my God.
But now it's my bookmark.
Wow.
Show the class. And then also I bought a copy of the book there. And I bought like this book and I bought a tote bag and I bought a jumper and like this and like a few other things. And the woman at the counter was like, I see you're a bit of a fangirl. And I was like, oh, sorry I came to your like fabulous manor to look at the Pride and Prejudice filming locations. Like, you got a job because of this, babe. Like, why are you so mean to me? And she was like, it's Jane Austen. Sorry for being a fan of one of the most famous novelists of the world. Like, I was so angry. And then the second thing she said to me was, oh, are you from America? And I was like,
Oh.
I'm out. See you later, bitch.
Spit on the counter and leave.
Yeah, and then Maddie was behind me and then she said like the same thing to her because Maddie was buying all this stuff as well. And then she was like, oh, and are you from America? Maddie was like, no, none of us are from America. Use your ears. Anyway, she was so rude. So
That is a weird thing to say because why else would you be there if you weren't a fan?
I'm also curious too, like, is there a minor amount of merch that would be acceptable in your eyes? Like, you could have one postcard and that is the normal amount.
that's so true. And like the other things that were on offer there were like soaps, a local variety of a nut mix or something like that. So it's like, well, I'm really picking the most exciting things here.
Maybe
But
she
yeah.
was really sad you didn't want the nut mix.
Yeah.
She was like, I hand roasted those nuts.
Sorry, lady.
Have some of mummy's nuts.
We went through the house and we went through all the things and we saw the statues that are in the film. Then we went through a walk through the grounds. We went to the Peak District where Elizabeth stands on the rock. And we climbed up the rocks and it was so windy. I literally thought I was going to die, but I didn't. So thankfully we are here to tell the tale.
I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. But it was so nice watching the movie and seeing those places. And I was like, oh my God, I've been there. It was so nice. Except for that stupid woman.
Stop! Pause the movie. Did you know in real life?
I kept getting the like photos that I took up on my thing and being like, Brian, look. And he was like, yeah, I was there. I know. I've been doing the same thing when I've been watching the Eras tour on Disney Plus. I like get out my video from that song and be like, look, I was there. And Brian's like, yes, I was also there. I've seen this video many times. Moving on.
Cute. We've talked a bit so far about some of the mean characters, but we have not yet touched on the meanest of the mean, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. She is a nasty lady. And when she came and like slammed Lizzie for the rumours that she was engaged to Darcy, and Lizzie's like, get out of my shit, bitch. Like, leave me alone. I'm not answering you. And she was like, everyone answers me. You have to answer me. And Lizzie's like, nah. Incredible.
The audacity to come all the way make zero small talk, accost someone in their own house, have a tantrum and leave.
Oh, it's so good.
Insult everything along the way as well. Like, you have a very small park here. Just all these like really targeted insults.
I think it's incredible to go so far out of your way to talk so much shit. Like, how pissed off do you have to be to go so far?
And just so sure that you're going to get your way as well.
Yeah. So she's heard this rumor and she's straight on out there. She's fuming. And the whole time she's like, and I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to say she's ugly, and I'm going to say she's got no propriety.
I love that Elizabeth never gives an inch when she's talking to her. And I love that that happens in this scene where she's just like, no, I'm not telling you what you want. No, who's to say? I don't know anything about that. But in other conversations she's had as well, one of the first conversations that they have where Lady Catherine's kind of roasting her for not having a governess and all of your sisters are out. She's saying, well, your sisters must be really young. Like, and then Elizabeth is sort of like, well, they shouldn't have to wait for everyone to get married before they can go enjoy their lives. And Lady Catherine says, upon my word, you give your opinion very decidedly for so young a person. Pray, what is your age? And Elizabeth says, with 3 younger sisters grown up, your ladyship can hardly expect me to own it. And then she's just kind of like gobsmacked. And then I also loved, again, what a desperate loser she is, where Elizabeth is talking to Fitzwilliam and she's having a great time, and Mr. Darcy's there as well, and they're just like chatting and bantering and laughing. And it says of Mr. Darcy, his eyes had been soon and repeatedly turned towards them with a look of curiosity, and that her ladyship after a while shared the feeling was more openly acknowledged, for she did not scruple to call out, what is that you are saying, Fitzwilliam? What is it you are talking of? What are you telling Miss Bennet? Let me hear what it is. We are speaking of music, madame, he said, when no longer able to avoid a reply. Of music? Then pray speak aloud. It is of all subjects my delight. I must have my share in the conversation if you are speaking of music, though there are few people in England, I suppose, who have more true enjoyment of music than myself or a better natural taste. If I had ever learned, I should have been a great proficient. Again, everybody knows someone like her. Everybody just,
Yeah, I really enjoy how she expects Elizabeth to be like so deferential. And every time she's like, I don't really care what you think.
yeah.
When she's like, oh, how come your sisters don't know how to play instruments, or none of you know how to draw? And Lizzie's like,
Your mother must have been quite a slave to your education. Not really. So funny.
With all that in mind, after every single utterance of us saying, I just loved it and I love them, we have to pick a favourite. And who is your favourite character, Bridget?
Mr. Darcy.
Laura?
I think probably Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm going Lizzie too. And then her dad's a close second.
Oh, he's so funny.
So Brian watched the movie with me on Thursday night, and he'd started to watch the series with me on Tuesday, and he fell asleep and I finished it and whatever. And so then when the movie started, he was like, oh, I remember I got up to the bit where Kelly said this. And I was like, Kelly? And he's like, yeah, the main one. I said, Elizabeth. He thought her name was Kelly.
Really close though, to be fair.
I also really love that he like defended himself on that, like, I don't know her. I'm never going to speak to her. She's not real. I don't need to know her real name. Like, you're not wrong.
That's just not how things work, Brian.
And our least favourite character?
My least favourite character is Mr. Wickham, because he's a bad man. Slimy man.
My least favourite character is probably Lydia.
Oh my God, me too.
What?
And anytime she spoke, I was like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and we didn't, I mean, I always do this at the end of the episode when we're trying to wrap it up, and then I think of something else I want to say, but she truly made my blood boil.
Yeah.
When Mr. Darcy's gone out on a limb, spent all that money protecting her societal standing and the pride of her family at such a great personal expense to him in so many ways. And then she's all like, oh, you must get married, like blah, blah, blah is the place to do it. And oh, like,
come to Brighton,
blah,
I'll
blah,
find you
blah.
all a husband.
Oh, she's just so tone deaf and selfish and silly. Oh, she makes my blood boil.
I was thinking that she would be my least favorite as well, but then I had to keep reminding myself that no, she's a minor. Mr. Wickham is the villain, but it's really hard to remind
that is true.
It's really hard to
She
convince.
was groomed.
She's a horrible person though, honestly. And Kitty, just as bad. Yeah.
I think my second option was Lady Catherine de Bourgh. So she is just such a pure antagonist, such a villain.
I just liked Caroline next after Lydia, I think. Just like, get a grip, girlfriend.
Like, calm down, please.
Can you please just like take a hot second, realize that you're embarrassing yourself and everyone around you, and become a girl's girl. Be more like Mr. Collins, the real girl's girl.
He kind of is.
When he's like, yeah, anyone who needs me to hype them up, I'll be their hype man. Whatever you need, like you need a pad, you need a tampon, I got you.
Which one of you bitches did the cooking? Because you did a really good job.
All right, ladies, I don't know if I even need to ask, but lit or shit?
Lit.
I think lit too.
Most ardently.
A most ardent lit.
I don't think it's even in the book, but when I used to watch the 2005 movie all the time, when Elizabeth goes to her dad to be like, yeah, it's not a joke, I actually am marrying Mr. Darcy, he's kind of like, what gives? And she's like, I've been nonsensical.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Dad always used to say, I've been nonsensical.
And you're like, shut up, you're ruining it.
It's serious. And that, dear listeners, is the end of our enchanting, beguiling and utterly bewitching Pride and Prejudice episode. Next month, we are reading Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. Have your say on what we read next by keeping an eye on the link in our show notes and on our socials. Make sure you subscribe to the show, and if you want to be on the same page as us, follow us at talklit.gethit on Instagram and TikTok.